I told my wife Emily that my seminar ended a day early, but I couldn't change my flight. That meant I would be back on Tuesday night. She was supposed to pick me up at the airport around 6. She complained that I would have to be gone another night, but said she would be only too happy to see me. I thought about it for about an hour. I realized that I had been away from home a lot, and that I should think more about my wife, with whom I had lived for 17 years. I went to the airport and tried to make one of those attempts to fix something. I was about ready to give up when I realized there was a flight to an airport near my hometown. The airport I use and prefer is about an hour north of where I live. The other airport was almost 2 hours south, and I had never used it. I checked and found that there was a flight leaving for that airport in half an hour, so I went to the counter to see if I could buy a ticket. I was amazed at how easy it turned out to be. An hour later, I was in the air, and 3 hours later, I was on the ground. I could rent a car and be home at midnight. Emily had to find a way to express her joy at my early return. I mentally made a list of assumptions and smiled to myself. I decided not to call her and make my appearance a complete surprise. It was just under midnight when I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark and Emily's car was gone. I thought that was odd as I carried my bag into the house and unpacked. Where could she be at this hour? I decided not to be surprised. I called her cell phone. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello?" she mumbled. She sounded sleepy. "Hi, Em. It's me. I thought I'd call and see how you were doing," I lied. "I'm fine, but it's well past midnight, Ron, and I was asleep," she replied. "I'll be at the airport tomorrow at 6 to pick you up. Don't worry." I had to admit I was puzzled, and was more than a little curious to know that she'd been asleep but not at home. "Where are you?" "I tried calling our home phone, but I only got through to the answering machine," I told her. "Where do you think I am, silly? I'm in bed. Our phone doesn't work. I have a repairman coming tomorrow to find out what the problem is. Several people have told me the same thing," she yawned. "Just call my cell phone if you want to get in touch with me. My head was spinning. Was she in bed upstairs? I was unpacking my suitcase there and didn't see her. It seemed unlikely. She was blatantly lying to me. But why?" "Well, I won't be on the 6 o'clock flight, so you don't have to follow me," I warned. "Looks like we'll have to stay a few more days. I'll call you when I know exactly what time and day I'll be back." "Oh, honey, I'm going to miss you so much. Come home as soon as you can," she purred. "I can't wait to see you." "I'll be in touch, darling. I'm sorry for waking you up. Sleep tight and dream of me," I finished. "I will," she promised. Did I hear her giggle as she hung up the phone? I dialed my home phone number and it rang normally. I thought about answering the phone and having a brilliant conversation with myself, but I didn't have the heart to do it. I went up to our room and searched under the bed and anywhere else the man might be hiding. "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building." I'm in sales, not rocket science, but my nose was working well. I smelled something rotten. How dumb was I? Pretty dumb. That was my honest answer to myself. The next morning, I got up early and moved the rental car to the other side of the street. Around 7 in the morning, I saw Emily's car pull up to the house. There was a man driving with her. I hid in the junk closet that is in the foyer. I kept the door ajar. Emily unlocked the door and they came in. "I just want to change and get ready for work," she told him. "I'll get clothes for tomorrow so we don't have to come back here tomorrow morning. I'll be back in 10 minutes. "I'd help you, but then I'd have to make love to you again," he laughed. "Then I'd have to fire you for being late." "I don't think you'd fire me," Emily replied from above. "You like it too much that I work under you. Even your wife thinks I'm the perfect secretary. What would you say to her?" So this was Emily's new boss, and he was the one she thought was obnoxious and arrogant. I wondered what else she would do if she liked the guy. He'd only been with the company for a couple weeks, if memory serves. What a fast worker. "I told her you're the same age as her mother and weigh 100 pounds, her boss laughed. "When she sees you, I'll have to fire you anyway." Then he added, "I told her I'll be looking for a house this week. Now it looks like I won't be away from the hotel for a couple days." Emily came back into the room and laughed. She looked gorgeous, and Mr. Boss, was his name Joe, grabbed her and gave her a slow, wet kiss. I was tempted to grab an umbrella off the shelf and shove it up his ass. "Why don't you spend tomorrow night with me right here? We can go out to dinner and be there by 8 p.m. Maybe when we get back, you'll be lucky enough to see the lodge after you chat with the owner," Emily suggested. If you're up for it, I can take you through all the rooms. Would you like that kind of tour? What if hubby comes home early? Asked the boss. Jeff, you're so nervous. She grinned. That was his name, Jeff. Ron will call so I can pick him up at the airport. He'll give me a day's notice, so if he doesn't call today, he won't be home tomorrow. That's good enough, Jeff told her. I don't want some jealous husband trying to kill me. Ron's a SEAL, Emily replied. He'd probably offer you a beer and apologize for bringing me into your arms. He sounds like a wuss to me, Jeff suggested. My wife would rip my balls off. I'd have Ron's balls if he cheated on me. Fear keeps you men in line. Then Emily added, most of the time. You don't seem to be too afraid of your wife. Believe me, I'd be in deep shit, Jeff replied. I'd be lucky to save my life. Luckily, she's in Houston, so I feel pretty safe. That was all I heard as they walked out the door. My face was red and my blood pressure must have been off the charts. Not only was she unfaithful, my wife despised me. I sat down and pondered the situation. Slowly, a plan began to emerge. I remembered that Emily had told me that her new boss was being transferred from the company headquarters in Houston. I needed to find out what his name was, so I made a few phone calls. A few silly questions to the female receptionist at Emily's work quickly brought me all the information I needed. His name was Jeffrey Ross, and he had a wife and 2 teenage children. She would stay in Texas until the kids finished their school year, and then they would join Jeffrey Boy here in Springfield. He would look for the house every night after work. I looked up the last name Ross in Houston on the internet switchboard and found 3 Jeff Rosses in Houston. With the first call, I hit the bullseye. Mrs. Ross? Mrs. Jeffrey Ross? I asked. Yes, I'm Mrs. Jeffrey Ross. May I help you? She answered. Does your husband work for the Halifax company? I asked. Yes, he does, she replied. This is Don Watson from Halifax, I lied. We're planning a small party for your husband, Jeff, and you. We'll provide you with round-trip tickets to Springfield and back. It'll be a complete surprise for Jeff. Will you be able to make it? I couldn't help but think about what an asshole I was, but all's fair in love and war. I've been to war. I can ask my sister to watch the kids, she replied. That sounds really nice. When is this affair scheduled? I almost answered her question directly, but held my tongue. Tomorrow night. You'll need to catch American Airlines Flight 1435. Just charge your card and the company will reimburse Jeff with a check, I told her. We'll have someone pick you up at the airport. The flight will arrive at 5 p.m. and the party will be at 8, so there should be plenty of time. Just remember to keep this a secret, okay? She promised not to say anything to anyone, and I ended the conversation. I then started calling Emily's friends and family to invite them to Emily's surprise party. I told them that she had gotten a promotion from her boss, and I thought it was cause for celebration. Everyone seemed satisfied with this explanation and the need to keep it from Emily. I asked them to be at our house by 7 to be sure Emily would be there. I didn't want to be a bad host, so I called a local restaurant and ordered food and drinks. I explained that everything was to be set up on the veranda, next to the living room, by our pool. Emily has always wanted to throw a nice party on that veranda, I thought. This should please her. I left them directions and told them that the house might be empty when they arrived, but they could bring everything to the outdoor veranda by going around the house. The next day, I arrived at the airport half an hour early. As passengers were entering the baggage area, I asked a couple of women without a date if they were Mrs. Ross. As I asked one of the women, I heard a voice addressing me. Hello, I'm Mrs. Ross, she stated. Are you here to pick me up? I was almost speechless when I saw her. She had the looks of a movie star. I had to try twice before I could answer. My wife was an attractive woman, but this woman was the gold standard. My name is Ron, and I'm here to pick you up. My wife works for your husband, I explained. Did he ever mention Emily? Yes, he did, but I thought her husband would be a little older, she replied. Damn, that asshole actually told his wife that Emily was old and fat. I had to think fast. She seemed a little suspicious. I'm often told I married an older and bigger woman. I tell everyone that she just has more experience and she is more to love. I offered my version. She seemed to think about it for a moment, then smiled. I dodged that bullet. We packed her bags and headed to the parking lot. It was 6:30 when we got to my house. I was explaining to Mrs. Ross that it was an outdoor party in honor of her husband and also in honor of my wife's birthday when the guests started to arrive. The caterer was finishing setting everything up, and I was impressed. It looked like a first-class party. I didn't realize it could be done so easily. By 7:30, everyone I invited was in place. I asked them to park behind the church a half-block away so our driveway would be clear. I explained to everyone that I would hide in the living room, and when the guests of honor pulled up to the house, I would turn off the patio lights. This would be a signal for them to be very quiet. We have sliding glass doors leading to the veranda and vertical blinds that could be opened by simply pulling a cord about 10 cm. There was also a cord to pull the blinds apart. There were also heavier curtains that we pulled over the doors in cold weather. They were big enough for me to hide behind, to reach the cords of the vertical blinds and the light switch on the veranda. A few minutes before 8, I saw Emily's car pull up in front of the house. I turned off the lights on the deck and hid behind the curtains. Everything became very quiet. The door opened and Emily and Jeff laughed. It was nice to know they were having a good time. "I can't wait for us to have sex," laughed Jeff. "I thought we'd never get here." He pulled Emily's dress down over her head, exposing her, wearing only a thong and nothing else. She laughed, pulling them off her nice round ass. "You're so horny all the time?" Emily marveled. Jeff pushed her onto my chair and they began their adultery. I carefully turned on the light. "What are you doing here?" She demanded an answer. I was a little disappointed at such a trivial question. Perhaps the surprise had numbed her brain. Or was it the hardcore sex she'd just gotten? "This is my house, Emily. My name is on the deed," I replied. "I didn't think you'd be home for a few more days," she exclaimed. "It's quite obvious," I replied nonchalantly. "I have to go now," Jeff muttered. "I have things to do. Can I get you a beer or something?" I asked. Both Jeff and Emily were taken aback by my offer. I could see Jeff thinking that Emily was right in assuming that I would offer him a beer if I caught them together. I smiled to myself as I watched his train of thought. Before Jeff could answer, his wife burst into the room from the veranda. She was holding a large purse and waving it as hard as she could. Jeff was so surprised to see her that he didn't even move to defend himself. I think he landed about 5 feet from where he was standing. Emily's mother and sister came into the room next. Emily was still naked. "Get dressed, Emily, you slut!" her mother snapped, picking up Emily's dress and holding it out to her. "That was a great show you put on for all of us. You should think about doing porn." Emily was too stunned to speak. I turned on the porch light and she saw 20 other people looking at her. I went out and started filling my plate with potato salad and wings. Then I got a can of beer out of the refrigerator and went back inside. I sat down to eat and watched Jeff try to sit on his ass and Emily try to regain her lost speech. I had to admit that the whole thing was frustrating as hell. As I chewed my wing, it occurred to me that I wasn't the one who had created this mess. Emily and Jeff had put themselves and those who loved them in this difficult position. In the end, it was better for everyone to know the truth. It was good to find out what the shit was and move on. Eventually, things settled down. Emily's cousin drove Mrs. Ross to the motel. Another cousin helped Jeff to the car and gave him a ride to the motel. Emily's mother asked her if she wanted to go with her, but Emily refused. "I know you must be upset," her mom told me. "And Emily really deserves a beating, but I think she's suffering enough as it is." Then they left. Emily hid in the bathroom and I heard the shower running. I've never enjoyed a beer and wings so much, sitting alone and going over the events of the evening in my mind. Once or twice in my life, the planets align perfectly, and the plan actually works. After eating all my salad and wings I could eat, I started cleaning up. Cleaning up after this crowd took quite a bit of time. I had to wrap the groceries and put them in the fridge and freezer. It was past midnight when I sat down at the table with the last beer of the evening and relaxed. Emily came into the room and sat across from me. "I hope you're happy. You did everything you could to ruin my life tonight," she complained. "Even my own family thinks I'm some worthless whore or harlot. Is that what you wanted?" "Emily, why would they start thinking that? Did I do anything to give them that impression?" "Maybe it was you?" I asked. "The only reason I can think of to form that opinion is when you get caught with your boss. Would any sane person think that's what sluts or slutty women do? If you thought we had a problem, you could have come to me instead of inviting the whole damn neighborhood over," she hissed. "Do we have a problem?" I grinned. Are you telling me that if we had a problem, you would have discussed it with me before you slept with some asshole? I never meant to hurt you, Ron. I never thought you'd even know about it, Emily reasoned. You're hurting me on purpose. So inviting people over to my house for a little surprise party for my loving wife is worse than sleeping with someone outside of marriage? I asked. I don't think many people would agree with that. Then she said what I had been waiting to hear for so long. If you had been around more, this would never have happened, Emily reasoned. You didn't pay enough attention to me, and I fell for Jeff's ploy. I was so alone and vulnerable. I laughed heartily. She was such a stupid bitch. She was actually trying to blame me and make me apologize for leading her into the arms of another man. I felt a deep satisfaction as I closed the bedroom door behind me and locked it. My shackles had been removed. I was emotionally free, and soon to be legally free. I looked forward to my new life.